Win big with new DRF All Access past performances. With one best-in-class product, you now get all 3 past performance formats. Go to DRF.com and use coupon code 1FREEPP for a free single card today.
Hi, everyone. This is the preview segment of Derby Watch. I'm Brad Free with David Aragona. Derby preps this coming week include the Grade 2 Rebel Stakes at Oaklawn Park and the Saudi Derby in Saudi Arabia. No points, but a pretty good horse is expected to start in the Saudi Derby. David, we're going to start off by talking about the Rebel Stakes. This could have been a good race if there had been a California shipper, but Muth did not make the trip, and we're left with a fairly dominant favorite, at least on the morning line.
Yeah, it's a 13-horse field, but it feels like we're going to have a prohibitive favorite in this race in Timberlake, who was an accomplished 2-year-old last year, Grade 1 winner in the Champagne. I know some people may be a little disappointed with his Breeders' Cup Juvenile, though in retrospect, I don't think he ran quite as poorly in that race as the narrative might have indicated at first. And he's reportedly been trading great for this comeback. And Brad, at the end of the day, he's just not facing a particularly strong field for a $1.25 million race.
Now, going into last week's Risen Star, we thought, wow, this is a really, really good field. We got 5 horses on Derby Watch running in the Risen Star. The Rebel Stakes, Timberlake is the 6-5 favorite. Only one other horse in the field, that being Just Steel, who was blown away by Mystic Dan. Only 2 Derby Watch listers in the Rebel Stakes. The winner earns 50 points. I got to say, this is, at least on paper, a race that Timberlake is supposed to win. Would you agree?
100%. I mean, He beat some legitimate 2-year-olds last year that are probably better than the competition he's returning against in this race. And there's always that outstanding question, will those good 2-year-olds from the last year come back as the same horses or potentially build on that form as 3-year-olds? We don't yet know that answer with Timberlake, but based on his morning training, it does seem like he's doing well in this race. And if he returns as the Timberlake that we do in 2023, this field seems like it could be in trouble.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And his workouts have looked visually impressive, at least on video. He doesn't really face a whole lot in this field. The second choice on the morning line, I don't think that Just Steel can beat Timberlake. I'm not saying he can't, but I doubt that he will. I think I'm most interested in Just Steel to see how he runs, because he's a horse that Mystic Dan blew off the track last time out in the Southwest. And I'm waiting for that Southwest win by Mystic Dan to be validated, possibly by Just Steel. David, he's the second choice on the morning line. We still have him ranked in the top 20. What about Just Steel?
I like Just Steel as a horse, and I really respect the improvement that he's displayed over his last trio of races. I mean, he ran well in the Smarty Jones. That's a race that's proven to be stronger than it looked at the time. And then last time in the Southwest, I mean, if you're somebody like me who thinks that there was a bit of a rail bias that day, Just Steel, he was 3 wide around both turns, and he arguably moved a little bit soon into that pace. So I thought he ran really well that day, even losing by 8 lengths, finishing second. I just don't really view him as a horse that's going to continue getting better with more distance along the Derby Trail. And even though this is the same trip, a mile and the 16th, I wonder if he's a horse that doesn't really want to go beyond a mile, as good as he is. And even though he's in form right now, I just don't really see him taking another step forward going longer.
Yeah, I don't know about taking a step forward either, especially considering he's had 9 starts. I wonder if maybe we've already reached his ceiling. He's still 3-year-old. It's February. Yeah, there's certainly room to improve. But at this point in time, I think he'd have to do something a little unexpected to emerge as a top Derby prospect. He's still on the list. He deserves to be, but he has his work cut out. And actually, so does Timberlake in the first start of his campaign. David, you took a deeper look at the Rebel Stakes in a separate video, correct?
I did. I handicapped the entire field, went through every runner, whether I thought they had a chance or not. And we took a look at that. I recorded earlier today, but I would agree, just to condense the version here, Timberlake looks very tough to beat. What I'll be most interested to see with Timberlake is how he settles in the early stages of this race, because we saw it a couple times last year in the Hopeful when he still had the blinkers on. And even with the blinkers off in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, he got very rank in the first half of his races, and it really prevented him from producing the finish that you would have expected. So I'll be interested to see how he settles, regardless of whether he wins or not.
Yeah, he did get a little keen in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. I'm going to give him a pass for that. I just think that the traffic situation did not benefit him, and he found himself in an uncomfortable position. But it's a good point. I mean, now that he's 3 years old and he's had some races under his belt, he should be an improved, better horse this year with a foundation, a juvenile foundation, and a racing experience going forward. Okay, so that's the Rebel Stakes. The only other Derby, I guess you could call it a Derby prep, it's the Saudi Derby. No Kentucky Derby points will be awarded, but there's a lot of money at stake, $1.5 million in the Saudi Derby on the Saudi Cup undercard. That's on February 24th. Japan-based Forever Young will be among the favorites in the Saudi Derby. And I know that you're a big fan of Forever Young, David, for all the right reasons. Tell us what you're looking for with regards to Forever Young.
Yeah, I think you're just looking for him to legitimize the impressive wins that we saw in Japan against some better competition. I think we're expecting the Saudi Derby to come up a slightly tougher race than what he's faced already in Japan. But note that he's a horse that went 2 turns 3 times in Japan. All of his races were going a little bit longer than this. So this will be cutting back in distance to a 1-turn mile. So I don't know if it's critical for Forever Young to win this race. I think it's more of a stepping stone to the UAE Derby, which is the important race for him. If he's going to get into the Kentucky Derby, he's going to do it by finishing first or second in the UAE Derby. So this is just a prep race, but I really liked what I've seen from him on replay. I mean, he's a horse that's just looks like he's big, well muscled. And if he continues improving from a form and physical standpoint as a 3-year-old, he could be pretty good.
Yeah, no doubt about it. He's not going to get any Derby points this weekend, but he can pad his bankroll, and the points will come in the UAE Derby in early March. Okay, that's a brief look at the Saudi Derby. Let's finish this off by looking at our On the Bubble segment. These are horses that we are monitoring. They're not on the list, but they very well could be in the near future. Born Noble, we've seen him a couple times. He's still a very green colt, David. He has all kinds of ability. And despite him losing last time out, finishing second at odds of 2-5, I guess they're talking about the Fountain of Youth against Locked and Dornoch for Born Noble. Does he still have a license to move forward? I think he does.
Yeah, he ran very well on debut, and you could argue he ran the best race in that allowance race because it looked like he had the race won, and he sort of took an awkward step. It looked like he maybe stumbled and bobbled a little bit in mid-stretch, and that cost him some momentum and maybe cost him the victory that day. Good sign that they're looking to come back in a Derby prep, and that Fountain of Youth is suddenly coming up a very intriguing matchup among some horses that have already won this year and some coming back to make their 3-year-old debuts.
Good race coming up next month. The Fountain of Youth. Drip won his career debut last weekend at Fairgrounds. He was also a horse that raced greenly because he ran the length of the lane on his wrong lead, but he sure did run fast in the slot, David. Drip by Good Magic.
Yeah, same trainer as Honor Marie, and he was a horse that was reportedly outworking Honor Marie slightly coming into his debut, and Honor Marie, the Risen Star, and he obviously ran well. This horse clearly has a lot of early speed. It's hard to know what to make of that race because even though it got a very fast fig, I think the first 5 horses across the wire were first-time starters, so it's hard to really measure that performance up against other proven or horses with proven form in that race, but clearly this runner has a lot of speed. He's by Good Magic, so it's conceivable that he could handle some more ground.
Yeah, his trainer, I've read that he's looking for an allowance race and then possibly take one shot at a Derby points qualifying race to see if he can get in. It's asking an awful lot for a horse that made his career debut on February 17th to win the Kentucky Derby, but it has been done by a horse who debuted on February 18th. That was Justify a few years ago. Just a Touch is sired by Justify, and his debut was impressive, and I guess they're at least considering the Gotham Stakes, and that race goes 50 points to the winner. David, Just a Touch is a horse that could easily jump onto the list.
Yeah, it seems like he's one of the top Brad Cox trainees that is potentially pointing to the Gotham. I know Brad Cox is considering a few of his horses for the Gotham. We'll see. I think Birkin, another one that some people like, won a stakes at Aqueduct. But Just the Touch, I really was impressed by his maiden victory at Fairgrounds. Another horse that did win over a wet track, and it feels like that's a common theme on this year's Derby prep. If the track does come up wet on the first Saturday in May, we might have a field of horses with wet track experience. That could be a positive. But Just the Touch does feel like a horse that should at least be able to handle the stretch out to a mile based on his pedigree.
Yeah, well-bred son of Justify, Just a Touch, looking to possibly run in the Gotham, and then we'll see how good he is. Then finally, Top Connor. He made his career debut at 1 mile. That's a tough distance. He looked pretty good, David.
Yeah, I thought he was very professional. He broke from the rail, actually broke very alertly, but was taken back to rate, got a good education under Jose Ortiz, and had to work a little bit to get out into the clear at the top of the stretch. But I thought he really leveled off nicely to win that race, beat a horse who finished second that day and previously was third in that Conquest Warrior maiden race that we've talked about quite a bit. So that win seems to be somewhat legitimized. And Top Connor beat a solid field, got an 86 buyer. Who knows where he could go next?
Yeah, who knows? He does have a 1 mile race under his belt, only one start, but at least he ran 1 mile. So that is it. Let's take a quick look at the past performances real quick before we wrap this thing up. There's Born Noble. As David mentioned, he opened up what seemingly was on his way to victory in the allowance race, kind of pulled himself up or took an awkward step or whatever, but he lost a race that he had won. Drip on his wrong lead with that high figure, Just a Touch, and Top Connor. There are plenty of others we could have added to the list. Ramjet, who won in Japan. Epic Ride, a synthetic horse who's decisive in victory. Bergen, who's nominated to the Gotham. Don't think he's a mile and a quarter horse, but lots of other horses we're at least keeping our eye on. But this week's On the Bubble: Born Noble, Drip, Just a Touch, and Top Connor. That is a wrap for Derby Watch Preview. The Rebel Stakes is the top 3-year-old race this weekend. David and I will be back next week to talk about the Rebel Stakes and more on Derby Watch. I'm Brad for David. We'll see you next time.